Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Hobby Chop Podcast, the podcast for the people. You've got me, Big Ken, and welcome in Zip and Tyler. Fellas, how you doing tonight?
What's up? What's up?
Doing well.
I know Tyler's a little under the weather. Picked up more from Mohan than he bargained for.
Probably so.
I know I came home from that show and I put out an episode Sunday night, and I have to apologize because I know my level of enthusiasm was like in my mind. I was banging out a great episode, and I went back and listened. I'm like, yeah, I could just tell I was tired in that episode. But those 2-day shows, right? They take a lot. Now, I was there for 2 days. You guys were only there for Saturday, but
I was there for half a Saturday, and it was extremely productive.
Yeah. Well, I guess what I'm going to say is, I mean, Saturday was so busy, right? That was like a 2-day show in one.
It was very busy. That first 5-6 hours was quite nuts.
I know I got I had Scott DeMay. Well, shout out Scott DeMay. I mean, he's the promoter for the EC3, the show at Mohegan Sun, and I just have to say, it just keeps getting better and better. You know, every next show has always been better than the last show, and his numbers were north. His ticket sales for attendees, north of 3,500 on Saturday and north of 1,500 on Sunday. So I wasn't that surprised that Saturday was as busy as it was, knowing a storm was coming Saturday afternoon and evening, and nobody really knew how long it was going to last Sunday. But I was surprised at how busy it was on Sunday, thinking everybody came on Saturday and no one's going to show up on Sunday.
Yeah, I didn't show up Sunday. So talk a little bit about how, because we all saw Saturday, but like it's 1,500. That's still, was it the room looked like full still at 1,500?
Yeah. The room looked full, 1,500 on Sunday. And, it started at 10 o'clock Sunday morning. And I would say probably by 11:30, I was looking at Rich next to me saying, I can't believe how busy it is here today. And we both thoroughly agreed that, and there was people that were traveling in from that show too, people that came up from New Jersey. I had some, people at my table who said, look, we just drove in from New Jersey. They had planned on coming on Saturday, but knew they were never going to make it home at night. So they waited till Sunday. And I think there was a lot of people. I know the line out the door on Saturday morning. I ran out and I saw at a few minutes to 10, I saw the line all the way outside the door. So I knew it was going to be busy.
Yeah. I brought my brother-in-law who's into Pokemon. I have no idea about any of it, and this was his first card show ever. So pretty good first show. And he like, before the show, he had like a list of cards he wanted, and he found all of them within like 40 minutes. And like, so I don't know anything about Pokemon, but he was ecstatic and loved it, and is like, I want to go to more shows. So that was pretty cool too.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it was quite a while before I got to take a breath and get out from behind the table and even take a look around. And really, that was more so to just kind of walk over and say hi to Ken and Rich for a minute. And then Bill or Billy was calling me back to the table because somebody was there. But I mean, I consolidated down from 2 cases to 1 cases within probably the first 5 hours of the show.
Mm-hmm.
And then really for most of the day on Saturday, sold off most of the rest of what I had, to the point that, with the weather coming in, and I just decided to drive back on Saturday night, and it was a little treacherous getting back, but and then just relaxed on Sunday and let you all figure it out on Sunday.
Yeah.
So, but overall, great show. The new room worked out well. I thought the new room provided better spacing between the rows, which allowed a lot. Even though it was as busy as it was, the freedom of movement was still pretty good, which I think is really important at a big show like that. Even though you might have been, I know Ken, you alluded to your podcast on Sunday, you know, multiple people deep at a table, but the fact that you can still move and navigate your way was important. So kudos to Scott and his team for setting that up, and really really well ran show in general for as many people as they ran through there on Saturday for sure.
I mean, one thing I like about multiple people deep at a table, it takes away, and I know, and I'm going to say this, it really favors the dealer. When multiple people, when a show is that busy, it favors the dealer. But the thing I like about it the most is that that last third and fourth layer of negotiating becomes eliminated. Right. So if somebody comes in and they see they see your card and they say, "Hey, I see you're asking." I make up numbers. I see you're asking $100 on the card. I see the last one sold at 85 or sold at 89. Can you be here? And a lot of times that number, if there's nobody around, right, could be $50 or $45 and not even close, because now it's going to be a longer 3, 4, 5 level of negotiation. Go here, come back here, go back there. Let's change that, right? Where when there's 1, 2, 3 people deep at the table, right? People want to be closer to your price, because, I mean, if I've got a card for $100 and you're offering me $45 and somebody's asking me about this card, I'm just going to say to you, no, I can't be at 45, and I'm going to direct my attention to somebody else, right? So if they're interested in that card, I think the negotiation is a little bit better at the table when you have, more people there. And that's the kind of day it was. I felt that the offers being made on the cards were much stronger, right, than if the show was a slow show or that wasn't many people there. And people are like, well, it's not a busy show, and I'm going to try to, get a really good deal. Like maybe this dealer, as an attendee, they may think maybe this dealer may need a few sales, and maybe they'll let that go for $10 cheaper than they normally would, or something like that. So I enjoy a show like that, even though it's busy and you're back and forth and you're doing all this talking and so many different things are going on. I enjoy a show like that because we can seal the deals much faster at the table than being long and drawn out if the show is slow. I don't know if you saw that at your table, and Tyler, 1 and 2, Zip, you're out, the opposite, right? You're out selling some cars, walking the show. So I mean, how did that show being so busy affect or help either of you two?
I would say that it's certainly was a benefit, right? Because the one thing you can look at is when it's that busy and you know that the traffic's coming and people are in the room moving about and the hustle and bustle is there, it makes it easier to be stronger with your numbers, right? It's easier to have that conviction. Even during the VIP hour, that 9 a.m. to 10 a.m., it was many more people than I had seen before. Because actually, what's interesting is the last February, the Mohegan show was really my first big card show as I got back into this as an attendee. I wasn't set up, and I had bought the VIP ticket, and really for that first hour, it was really beneficial to me as walking the room and buying, because there wasn't that many people in there. I kind of had free reign. But interesting quick story was Saturday, I had a younger gentleman come up to my table right at the beginning of the VIP hour, and I'd already kind of looked around and saw that there was quite a few people in the room, and he walked up and asked me to pull out 5 cards. And so I pull them out, and I had just comped them all on Thursday. And anyway, and then he narrows it down to four of the 5 cards, and the comp value of my sticker was around $245 on those 4 cards. So not expensive. What was interesting, your comment, Ken, about, somebody trying to get a good deal. His initial offer was $150. 61%. And I just kind of like chuckled at him, and I kind of gave him just a bottom number, and I said it's it's whatever, $210, 85% or something like that on those cards. And knowing he was never going to get there because I just wanted to move on, and he did just move on. And even after I said bottom number, he came back with another number. Funny thing, there's literally a guy standing right behind him. He moves on. Guy walks up. He says, "Keep these two of those cards out." And he goes, "Will you take 140 for those two?" And I said, "Yeah, that works." No negotiation, no nothing.
Yeah.
He knew the comp was good, and he just paid the right number.
Yep.
So that's the advantage to your point about the dealer that the dealer
Mm-hmm.
has. You can kind of really quickly move on from what I'd say is a non-serious situation to somebody who's actually going to probably transact with you.
Yep. Zip.
Yeah, I did pretty well selling cards to dealers. And people I have relationships with. I know we touched upon that last week. It's just, who relationships, this and that. If I was set, like I used to set up frequently, this would be one of the best days I ever had setting up if I had set up from me just walking around selling things. But when I went to try to buy it, just I didn't work for me. Because like it's hard. Like if you're gonna buy a truly collectible piece, then pay up for it. But like what I was looking for specifically wasn't really there. But that's fine. Like of what I'm looking for. But like there were a lot of the prices were really strong, and you guys are right. You know what I mean? Like people coming up looking for these cards, they're gonna pay strong on them. I just didn't see anything that I wanted to pay strong on. So, however, when you get into cards, well, you can sell to dealers who are going to pay really, really strong because a show like that is so hot. I'm probably selling cards to them 85% plus that I acquired in very large scale collection deals, at better percentages. And it just made sense for me, but with that being said, it's just for me, the show was not a buying show. It was a selling show. And as an attendee, so like, it really is just kind of each person's situation is their own. Like, it sounds like you guys did really well. And to your credit on why I couldn't buy, it's because I think for most people, it probably was favored in the dealer. And you guys could hold firm on your pricing because in a room of 3,500 people, someone else could just walk up and pay that sticker if that's a card they've been looking for. Mm-hmm. So for someone like me, if I don't love that and I'm not going to put it away forever, I'm not going to pay that because, right? Like just because how does that make sense for me? If I don't want it forever, my goal is to buy it and then resell it. I'm not going to, I'm not going to pay super strong on it because what's my exit plan with that?
Yeah.
But aside from that, the show was awesome. And I made some great deals with people. I saw some people that I haven't seen in a little bit. It's always great to see people. So no complaints on me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The one other thing that I would add about the show too, and this probably goes back a little bit into our conversation last week about just strategy and doing shows in general, is it is really important to have an idea of who's going to be at the show, what they buy and how they buy from they're on the other side. And what I mean by that is really the guys we all know that are buying for repacks, buying for breakers, etc. And take some time to get to know those people, to understand first what they buy, and what is required for them to buy the card, because oftentimes they'll buy anything, right? You don't need to have a specific thing for them to buy. It's just it needs a few simple things. It needs a comp. It needs a recent comp, and it needs to be over a certain value for some of those guys. And there were a couple times throughout the show where I actually bought a card that walked up to my table, knowing that those two or three guys were still going to come over to me, and I could flip it right to them because it had a recent comp and it knew the number. And Ken, you alluded to, there's on your personal podcast, that idea of buying at a show and flipping is very minimal at this time, and I agree with that. There's few opportunities, but they still do exist. You just have to take the little time to understand certain folks and build those relationships up front. And as I mentioned, I consolidated down, and a lot of that is I had weaker inventory probably traditionally than what I typically would have for that kind of show, just because we had such a success in Atlanta. But I still had a lot of stuff that I knew a certain few folks would want. And that's the stuff that I just held on to and threw out there. As soon as I saw that guy, I waved him over and I said, I'll give you, take as much as you want. I don't need to, I'll be go happy and start trying to buy around the show if I get it all gone. Yeah. So, again, that's the relationship building and stuff like that. And, because I know that was something a lot of people liked us talking about. I just wanted to kind of touch back on that because I think it's important.
You talk about the relationships and over this last year, being in the lane I am, selling a lot of the Caitlyn Clark and the Paige Beckers and the NCAA stuff that's not really mainstream, right? When I price my cards going to a show, I price them knowing the people are going to come and they're not going to pay sticker price. It's really just a starting point, to start negotiating on that. But I feel a sense of responsibility now that there's a lot of people, and this show was one of those shows. There's a lot of people who are new to the hobby that are showing up, with dads with their daughters or moms with their sons, or and the kids want to come and they want to buy a Caitlyn Clark or a Paige Beckers or something like that, but they're not savvy to shows, right? They don't come to shows. You can tell that they're just showing up, and this could go a lot of ways, right? So I feel, to me, there's a sense of responsibility. When I had a mom come up with her daughter saying, she wants to buy a Caitlyn Clark card, and her daughter looked in the case and said, I like that one, and the mom was just ready to pay this. And I was like, okay. I took it out, and then, I knew what the comp on the card was, right? And I said, no, just don't worry about the sticker. Just give me that, right? They look at you like, oh, wow, this is great. But on the, I don't want to charge them an extra, $10 or $15 because I don't want them to have a bad taste in their mouth, right? I don't want them to walk away and somebody say, oh, that card should have been this or that. So I want them to have a good experience in the hobby. And this was one of those weekends where a lot of new faces showed up and they found these cards that they were looking for. And they're not expensive cards by any means. They're not expensive. I do have some, but those cards there were a lot of lower end cards. And it was filling a need in that lane, right? But again, there's that you want to do the right thing with them too. So I think that it was one of those shows where there was just such a variety of people that were coming, from repackers that were buying at their, like you said, there were percentages and there had to have been recent comps and all that, to people that show up and say, we just want to own a Caitlyn Clark card, or we just want to own a Paige Beckers card, right? So,
yeah, and I can say from walking around, because I definitely walked around more than both of you. Not a lot of dealers wouldn't have been doing that, and that's just part of the hobby, or right? And it's just like me, someone who's probably sharp, just because I've been doing this a while and I know the prices. Like, I see cards like, for example, there was like a $1,900 card that was stickered at $2,300, which doesn't sound like ridiculous if you know show prices, but guess what? I really liked it. I didn't even bother because like I don't want to have to fight to get down to comp. Like it's just like, it's not worth it for me. And also I feel like the lane that I'm in now, it's just like, I would rather just buy really well, so then I can give people good deals. Cause like I'm making money, and then like it's easy for other people too. And then, like for what I've been doing now with buying collections and then piecing it out, I legitimately have like my little black book of people who I can just sell to like that at any time. And they're waiting for it because I can give them good, consistent deals. And like, that's way easier for me than like, I'll just put it, like the energy it takes to go back and forth to get like whatever percent that people need, and they're on these super tight margins. I'd rather just not do that. And I guess people say it's easier said than done, but like I feel like I'm doing it consistently now. It requires better sourcing. And like kudos to you for like not being a jerk and taking advantage of this, this mom and her daughter, but like a ton of other dealers in there would have. And I think it's important to say that too, because it's not all hunky dory. Like, no, there's people in that room who like would have gladly just taken them for their money. Like, it's just, yeah.
And I'll add one kind of final piece to that is and hopefully every dealer who might listen to this will take these words and think about them a little bit. One is, first of all, it's a hobby. Let's not forget that the kids are very important to the future and why a lot of the adults are there too. They're driving a lot of that 3,500. So when you see that kid going through your dollar box, ask them who their favorite player is. When they pull out 5 cards and they've got $5 to spend and they put the 5th one back and they want the 4, grab the 5th card and give it to them. Just, if they stop by and you find out their favorite player is Romo Dunze and you got a $2 card in there, hand it to the kid. Just do those little things because you never know, right? That adult might be a customer on a bigger card later, but the most important thing is forget that. It's just, it makes their experience very positive, which then is like going to allow them to come back, participate in the hobby, and the whole hobby gets better in general. And then the other thing that I would add, and this is something that I'll piggyback a little on, is a lot of content I consumed over probably the last 5 or 6 days. And it was mentioned on a couple different other podcasts, but, pet peeves about certain things when attendees go to shows. And one of the things that I constantly heard over and over is when they can't see the price of the card or it's stickered way above comp. And I could not agree more. Sticker your card, show people the price, don't put it on the back, don't hide it. It's only detrimental to you. I don't care what you believe. I will argue you to the death on that. And just put the sticker at the comp. Or, if it's 10% over, sure, that's fine too. But don't over sticker at $400 or $500 because what somebody will do is exactly what Jordan talked about with that $1,900 card. They will not. And
you know me, if I want that card, I will buy it cash. Like I will literally just take it. But like, yeah.
So not showing the price with a sticker and just throwing out a sticker that is way overpriced. Will not do you any good in the long run. You are there to make sales and have transactions, and that only happens if people stop to your table, you're friendly, you talk to them, and you start and you have that dialogue and that rapport with them. And if that is immediately shut down before a word is spoken, you're just doing yourself a disservice. So I would just recommend everybody really think about that and just an opinion from me this week on that kind of thing.
Nice. All right, so we're going to move on. I know there's been a lot of buzz around the internet about PSA changing up grading standards and lowering their gem rate on their cards. And I know we don't have to drag out a whole lot of numbers on that. And I know we have a listener who asked a question on that, but we're still going to catch the first part of their question, but the second part was really about the grading standards. And I know I've talked about my PSA orders that I felt like probably for 6 months or so, I was getting a 50% gem rate on everything I sent in. If I sent in 20 cards, I was getting 10 or 11 that would gem. If I was sending in 40, I was around 20. If I send 50, 60, it was always seemed to be coming in half. My last order, that was 23 cards, nine of them gemmed. And I'm going to share, actually, I'll let you guys talk first, and then I'm going to share some information I just got tonight. What are your thoughts on this?
Somewhere I heard was that it was written this way, but really it didn't change. Because if you go on their I have it pulled up right now on the PSA grading standards. At the bottom there's asterisk, and this is the big thing for me, at least, is the centering change that went from 60-40 to 55-45, which is huge. It really is. But the centering note, and how I think it has been forever, is that at the grader's sole discretion, a small variance may be permitted on occasion based on the card's overall eye appeal. Meaning it's still in that, like, if it is 60-40, as long as the card, presents really, really well and everything is okay, it still has that opportunity, which I believe that's
but I don't think that really changed. And I mean, and I know, and you can go back on a lot of podcasts that on my earlier seasons, and I talked about this, that I heard from so many people that if the edges and the corners and the surfaces are perfect, that the centering could be a little bit more off. But if there was anything else on there and the centering was off, then it wasn't going to gem.
Yeah.
Right. And if the centering was perfect and there was one other blemish in on an edge or something that wasn't overly bad, that they would gem that card too. Right. So now, I mean, what people are talking about is the actual gem rate, that these cards aren't, and on mine, I just said my last order of 23 cards, I had 9 come back, which mostly I would have been expecting 12 or 13. Is that a lot? No. But if I'm sending 50 cards or 60 cards, that could become a lot more.
And then I think that leads into something else that I'll touch on in a little bit. But on the grading standards, I think it will make a difference. So when you're submitting things, I guess just have that much more conviction, maybe be a little more picky, or do your research on what 9s sell for and keep that as your floor, like a worst case scenario. Hey, if this 9s, what does that mean for me? Because I just got, a 44 card order pop, and I had a bunch of PSA 10 of like low end Jordan cards from the 90s. So like you can still gem them. You just have to have some conviction about what you're sending in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I heard a lot of talk about this through other podcasts and such, and I think the guys on Cards on the Table had a pretty good dialogue about it, and I believe that Nat Turner did come out and say that 55-45 has always technically been the standard.
Thank you.
That 60-40 was something that was just out there because it was at the discretion. Right. And I think what probably prompted this, and this is what was speculated on Cards on the Table as well, and I went back and watched the Twitter clip the X clip as well. But there was a pretty prominent individual who had a card that was graded and had got some grading notes on it that it was beyond 60-40, and he did a video and tweeted it at Nat Turner that it was well within the 60-40. And there's thoughts that may have prompted this. The verbiage changed just to make it a little more clear. I certainly think that part of the grading standards might be a little bit of why the gem rate's low. I think a lot of the gem rate is low because a lot of what's getting graded is Panini, and the quality control is not great right now, especially in Prism, right? I was just looking at, as we were starting the show, gem rates on probably what'll be the most graded card of the year, which will be the Jaden Daniels Prism Silver. And the overall gem rate has held really steady now for over a month on Prism in general at about 25%. So that probably is a good baseline. That's what it's going to finish at the end of the year. It's going to be around that 25% gem rate. On the Jaden Daniels Silver Prism, it's actually at 18%, so it's even below that. And if you compare that to last year, CJ Stroud's Silver Prism had about a 39% gem rate, which was lower than the overall 49% gem rate for 23 Prism. So I think the quality control is just not there. It's not the first time that we've seen things like this, right? I know if you go back to 21 Prism, Trevor Lawrence's Silver Prism is basically under a pop 20 or something crazy in a PSA 10 because there was a quality control issue. And thinking back to when Panini was actually taking the NBA licenses over, and which happened to be the Steph Curry rookie year with Bowman and Topps Chrome and things like that, the quality control was awful because Topps at the time printed everything as fast as possible before losing the license. And you see today where PSA 7s sell at outrageous numbers in a Steph Curry rookie. And so I think it's a lot of ebb and flow of those gem rates, and a lot of it just comes back to quality control. I'm not too worried that the PSA standards are going to move and cause less tins. I think as long as the card has good quality, the card manufacturers have good quality control, the gem rate will be what it is. I think what this will probably do is hopefully drive maybe the value of the PSA 9 back up a little bit. That's probably a win for everybody, but I just don't put a lot of stock into that. The PSA grading change is the reason we're seeing lower gem rates.
Or it'll force people to crack those 9s and keep resending them back, right? And try to gem them.
Or it forces people to adapt of what their whole process in cards is. Like, I not too long ago basically, I felt like I was living and dying by PSA, and to let, like, if you're going to treat it like a business, to let your business reliant on something as subjective as a grader at PSA, that's terrible. So, like, I think it's just people need to, like, have that upside when they can. But if that's like the full reliance, if you're really good, then great. But I feel like having that be your full reliance, maybe not as easy as it used to be. Maybe,
yeah. I got a message from my guy Homer Sports Cards, Jonathan, tonight, and he said he had just had a PSA reveal. He says the worst ever from PSA. He said 7 out of 33 gemmed. And
what did he send? Like what stuff? Like what kind of stuff?
He didn't. I tried to get back to him quick to see what he was sending out there, but I just didn't have enough time to get the information from him. But he said a lot of them came back, more than half came back 8 or below. So I don't know if that's just coincidence that everybody's talking about this, or I know I have a 50 card order that's been in research and ID now for like 3 weeks. So I'll be interesting to see, what, and a lot of it is new stuff, right? It's the Prism and Don Russ. So it'll be interesting to see what, because for me, I know what my and I don't, and another thing too, there's a lot of people grading cards these days too, right? It's a lot of people who just like, wow, I pulled this great card. I want to get it graded and send it in, whereas I sit here with this massive, area with the, just looking with a magnifying glass and looking at every single thing. So everything I send in my mind, like I know 95% of what I send, I think could gem. Like I don't see anything on there that's going to stop it. And then there's that 5% where I may see the divots in something or this or that. On this particular order, I had probably 30 something cards. And after we did an episode, and Tyler, you said you might as well send them, right? Because you have no idea, how they're going to react. So then I took those cards that I wasn't going to send because I didn't feel, and I've sent them back. So it's going to be interesting. And I've kept the list of what those cards were that I pulled out and then I added back to my order to see if they all just come back exactly how I think they were going to come back.
Yeah, and the one thing I'll add to that, because and again, I'm not so numbers driven, and this is why I don't put a lot of stock into the grading change. The gem rate on this year's Donruss is higher than last year's Donruss. It was 42% last year. It's 50% this year. I know, Ken, this is a card that's near and dear to your heart, the Jaden Daniels Red Pandora. The gem rate on that card is 66%. It's been graded at 1,191 cards. There's 787 gem 10s.
Yeah. But I still think for 2025, right? I know it's a 2024 product, but for 2025, and that product's been out since I think September, October, right?
Yeah.
I would have thought that the Jaden Daniels Red Pandora would be upwards of 1,500 to 2,000 in the pop rate by now. And I would think everyone who owned one of those cards would have sent it in. And I think the PSA 9s, if you go look at that thinking, oh, everybody sent them in and they only 9, I think the 9s are only in the 350 pop count, right?
Yeah.
Somewhere right in there, about right at the halfway mark, the 50% mark.
Yeah, and I'll agree with it. I think in the long term that will be might end up being the shortest printed parallel or lowest pop count outside of the press proofs. I'll give you all a crazy stat real quick. His green press proof has a 4% gem rate. It's a pop 8 and a PSA 10.
I had 2 of those, and they were in such terrible condition.
Yeah,
the corners were white. The green card with the white corners. Yeah.
I also realized I just looked like I recently had a 44 card order, and it was 2 cards where one was 09, one was 2016, the rest were 2024 cards. And I actually the 09 I got a 9, the 16 I got a 10. But other than that, like the whole order, I had a 60% gem rate, and about half were Panini and half were Topps. So I think it's just a matter of what you're looking at and sending. But this is just me like grading a lot. I always feel much better. I mean, Topps has their own issues, don't get me wrong, but I feel much better sending in Topps cards than Panini cards every single time. Like when I buy to grade, like I feel like buying like Topps Chrome is just, or Bowman Chrome, like if it's not going to gem, you know it's not going to gem. But like it's very like clear to me. So, and also with Panini, you see this going down. It's probably because those dang machines are so overworked right now because they're running out of their licenses. So they're printing any and everything they can. So they don't care what these cards look like coming out. They're just feeding this crap to all of us to then just eat and put into more plastic. Like they don't care at all. So like,
I love when these young kids pull this auto out and they're, you're watching it on Whatnot or YouTube.
Oh, I got one right here for you.
And they're like, who is this dude?
Look at this banger. Al Toon for the Jets. Yeah, like what are we talking about? Just sitting here. That's the thing. And then
they opened up the vault and they just took everything out of there.
Yeah. So I mean I can't help but think that's not part of it. Like so downfall Panini.
Yeah. All right. You ready to do some listener questions?
Sounds good.
Sure. Let me pull it up really. Did you have one, Ken, that was submitted to you that you wanted to talk about, or do you want me to go right into our
Um, I did.
Okay.
I have to just go back and. All right, I have two. I'm gonna start with this one here. This comes from Tom, Hudson fan 15. He was on with me not too long ago. His question for the hobby chop: how worried are you of fake cards in the marketplace? We all know to be careful with certain cards, Michael Jordan 85 star and 86 flair, etc. But what about modern cards like 2007 Topps NFL draft autographs, fake patches? There are reports now of fake Caitlyn Clark cards already out there, and he sent me a link here, and I was amazed because I had no idea that there was a whole thing about telling you the draft night, which I've done so well on. I ordered 50 of those cards and gemmed most of them and had been you know selling them. This is the first that I've heard that people were making fakes of this card. I know personally, I really don't buy a lot of everything I buy raw is mostly ultra modern stuff. And I've been bit a few times on Tom Brady raw cards that I bought and I'd sent to PSA and they come back and say that they're fake cards. And after that happens a couple times, you're like, you know what? If I'm buying a card, I want it to be, for me, I want it to be graded. I stay away from, raw cards. So for me to be worried about that, I'm going to pass this question on to you guys because I stay away from. Now, I do have to say, I really enjoyed selling that vintage stuff this past weekend at Mohegan. But again, that was all graded, and I'm excited about that. And I think if I'm going to continue on with that, I would stick with graded stuff and stay away from raw. So I'm gonna pass this question off to you two.
For me, I think it's really important about what the card is. So like you said, Brady, and I actually have a perfect example. I drove like 2 hours on like a weeknight to get this beautiful looking Tom Brady rookie. It was up in Mass, you know what I mean? We're close. So like there's definitely a bunch of raw like Brady rookies that are floating around this area. Like that's just true. And
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like that's real. That happens all the time. So I drove up there and the guy wouldn't let me take it out of the soft sleeve. And I could see through it that there's supposed to be like, in the top right, it's supposed to have like this foil and it was just like printed. And I just cussed this dude out at like midnight in the parking lot at Shaw's because like I drove 2 hours and he knew what he was doing. And but like, guess what? I should have known. It's a Tom Brady rookie. Like, and I'll have way more, for example, the Fleer Jordan, if it's not in a slab, don't even talk to me about it because like it's just there's certain caliber of cards and I understand what Tom's saying that there's like the lower end cards and then I remember there was like that Wemby base prism that was coming out from China that was like mass produced as fakes, but like I'm not worried about it really. There's certain cards that I definitely won't touch, not graded, and I think you even alluded to it before about Brady. But yeah, overall, not too concerned about it. Is it there? Yeah. It almost got me, but yeah, that's all I really have to say about that. How about you, Tyler?
Not overly concerned. As long as I can take the card out and touch it, and take it out of the top loader, take it out of the sleeve, I'm pretty confident that I can figure it out. There are certain cards that are known fakes, the 86 Fleer, but even then as long as you know the history of the card and what is authentic about it, what makes it authentic, I've never seen a fake copy and looking at it a lot there once I knew what to look for that I couldn't identify like that. And So it's if you're going to potentially buy those type of cards, just make sure you've done your research. Like with many things we talk about, kind of what you put into it is what you get out of it. So I would tend to lean that way, but not overly worried about it. I did hear an interesting fake story about a card just because I bought one at Mohegan this past weekend, which was a CJ. Actually, Jordan bought it from you, CJ Stroud Micro Mosaic. Scott DeMay was telling me that at the last Mohegan show, or maybe the one in the summer, that somebody had bought a fake raw copy of that card at the show. And I was like, wow, that's an impressive fake to fake that card.
Yeah.
But he said it was very obvious once you took it out of the sleeve, because the texture of the card was really crazy. And the person who bought the card just didn't do that. So if you're going to buy that type of card, just take the moment, and if somebody tells you that they don't want you to take it out to look at it and examine it, then just pass. Just protect yourself. It's in your best interest.
For the record, I did sell Tyler this card, and it was slabbed. It was I did not sell Tyler a fake CJ Stroud.
It's very true, and for the record, I no longer own that card.
Fantastic.
So
love it.
See how quickly they work together to get rid of it.
Everyone. Tyler sold that fake card, not me.
Yeah.
Hey, well,
I will say Jordan probably did set my record for the shortest amount of time
I
ever owned a card at Mohegan on Saturday. I think I owned it for maybe 2 minutes,
and we each made like $100 on it.
Yes.
When does that happen? I don't know.
Yes. I managed to take it from Jordan and set it on my top of my case, and that is as much as I own that card. So funny story.
Yeah, that was great. Isn't that the best when that happens?
It is.
But
fantastic. Both
I'm just out here like harvesting raw materials. You're welcome.
Yeah. All three people in that transaction semicircle were happy with the results.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, and the only reason it didn't go to him was because ahead of time I had given it to you, or else it would have gone to him anyways. So yeah, absolutely. All right, so I think we're good on the fakes card, and not Tyler.
Well, I just want to add to that we did the episode on re-slabbing, sending the cards that they there was a question whether they would get regraded or not. And I know my guy Joe from Premier Sports Rhode Island, he had sent a message on that they don't grade the cards, but he had heard a story that somebody or knew somebody who bought a PSA 10 86 Jordan that came slabbed in a PSA 10, and there was a mark on the case, and they had sent it back to PSA to get it re-slabbed, and ended up contacting him and telling him it was a fake. So it was a fake in the slab. Now I know that's something that is those stories are much more few and far between, but it is still if you're buying and like Tyler just said, know what to look for. Even if you're buying a card that is counterfeited a lot, even if it is slabbed, know what you're buying, know what you're looking for on that card. I've never owned a Jordan rookie. I probably wouldn't own one that was a super expensive one. I may own a lower PSA grade or BGS grade on it, but certainly not one that would be that expensive.
Good rule of thumb. I wouldn't touch a damaged slab. Just to be honest.
Yeah.
Again, it's all about doing yourself a favor and protection, no matter how good the deal may seem. Just on the happenstance that it's not on the up and up, just eliminate that risk.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Not to mention it's just difficult to sell a damaged slab too. So
yeah,
absolutely. All right, let's get into some of these questions. From Devin Elliott. Seems like the hobby has moved more into an industry instead of a hobby, which has driven prices of modern stuff so high with everyone streaming on whatnot and so many avenues of selling cards. do you see this being a long-term part of the hobby, or is it something going away in a few years? I could speak on this because I sold a bunch of my cards this weekend that ended up on Whatnot on the stream last night. And I think it's going to go as long as this cycle continues. And I don't know when that will burn out. Because ultimately it's, for someone like me, it's pretty good. It provides me liquidity, like quick, with people who are going to do Whatnot, and they could pay so strong. I think, Ken, you're probably going to add on right after from something you told me off about someone taking a bunch of like lower end cards, from you in a large lot. But I hope it continues because, like, ultimately, it's one more way to get cards in the hands of collectors, I think. Obviously, people are still going to try to buy on Whatnot to flip, but a lot of people are at home, and it just is another avenue in the hobby. So I hope it continues. But everything always adapts and changes. So I don't know. I could see just on Whatnot, like, people dying out, and then like better Whatnot streamers just excel, like kind of thinning the herd. But
yeah, but you're saying it again. Like I'm going to just jump in. Like I don't see this. I don't see this ever turning in a different direction. I think it just keeps on going. It is definitely an industry. It is definitely a business, and it's definitely, all these people that are on Whatnot and Fanatics Collects and all these other places. I mean, the billions of dollars that are in this industry right now, from all the online stuff. And we talked about it just before we went on about Whatnot, how easy it is to go on there and just drop a fortune in such a short amount of time. All the way to the bigger shows, to these new Fanatics festivals that they're putting up, to the national. Like it's just such a huge industry. I don't see it ever turning around.
Yeah, it's an industry. It's not going to go away. I mean, as much as it's a hobby at its core, it is just another industry at this point, and I don't see it going away either because a couple different reasons, right? Fanatics is involved. That's a $30+ billion company that is now will own all of the licenses. So that's by far the biggest company that's ever been a part of what we call a hobby today. I think the other key piece of it is we're at a space in the hobby where it's open to all ages. And what I mean by that is when I was a kid, it was something kids did, right? And then you reached an age where collecting baseball cards or basketball cards was not as mainstream or in vogue with many of the other kids that you encounter day in and day out. And when you became a young adult, then that's just not what the young adults did. And then eventually, maybe when somebody was, well old and much older and became a collector, that's who ventured back into the hobby. I think today the hobby landscape goes from 5 years old to 95 years old, right? For the first time ever, probably since over the last 5 years, that's what it's morphed into. Every generation has a larger presence in the hobby than it ever did. And a lot of that is due to it becoming an industry. You can choose to collect stuff. Excuse me. You can choose to collect stuff and buy it from the convenience of your house, via Whatnot, via eBay, or many other outlets. So at the end of the day, it's just an industry at this time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. 100%.
Next question, we have Cyrus. In your guys' opinion, will Caitlyn Clark's cards hold more value in her Fever or Hawkeyes uniform?
Well, I mean, for me, talking on this, I'm of the mentality that, all these years, like everybody wanted to be first to buy the cards, but as soon as they came out in the pro uni, right, all of a sudden the college stuff just dropped off. Like almost worthless. Um, I, I see somewhat of a drop off of the fever stuff, but people are still buying that stuff. You still go to shows and there's still cards in there. And I'm surprised when I look and I see the prices are down, but I'm surprised that the prices haven't gone down further on that fever stuff. And especially some of those higher end, the Bowman U, the
Fever, the Hawkeyes that you're saying, the college stuff.
I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
The college stuff. Yeah, I said that wrong. Yeah. That her college stuff, that the prices haven't dropped as much as I thought they would. But now, like, even Prism Draft came out, and autos even in Prism Draft with her fever stuff are still way up there in price. Now Prism is just dropped, and the boxes right now are more than the football Prism hobby boxes. So I just think people just want a piece of her. They don't care if it's in a college uniform. And I think it's the new collectors too. It's the new people coming in that just say, I just want to own some of her cards. So they don't care if she's in a college uniform or a professional uniform. They just want or holding a uniform, right? Yeah, I think they just want her on a card.
I would venture to say it's going to be her pro stuff in the fever uniform. However, I also think it's important to realize that we are in the midst of the mania, as crazy as it's going to be, and all these releases are just coming out now. So it's going to be something that you're going to want to look back in 2 or 3 years to see what's still holding the more value. Because, like, for example, if you look at baseball, the first Bowman is king. That is the most expensive stuff, and that is their pre-rookie cards, right? That's what it is now. Also, Caitlyn Clark is her own animal, because I feel like this past year is the first time since I can ever remember that the WNBA was more significant than women's college basketball, and it's her, right? Like that's why. Because we grew up in Connecticut, and maybe that's why I have this view on it, but I feel like that's not true. It's just like women's college basketball has been, like, people are more invested in that than the WNBA. I think that's a fair thing to say until now.
Yeah.
And I think she's a huge part to it. So like Ken said, I think everyone wants a piece of her. I think overall all the stuff will hold somewhat value. I don't know what eventually it cools off to, or if it does, but I think the fever stuff is gonna be better, but her college stuff is not going to be as bad as like other people's college stuff just decimates.
There's a debate right now on. I'm part of almost every women's WNBA group on Facebook, and almost daily debates on what is going to be considered her rookie card. Right? Is it going to be her draft night holding the jersey? Is it going to be the Origins? Is it going to be Prism? Is it going to be the Bowman? And then people are saying, well, I don't know if Bowman produced as much as Panini did with, is it going to become a more rare and scarce thing because we're seeing this overproduction of cards right now? So I know there's a lot of debates, and really when I listen to what people are saying, I'm like, oh my God, they're right. That makes so much sense. Oh my God, he's right. He makes so that everybody's got a really good debate on what they're saying. And I guess only time will tell what becomes the more important or the more iconic, what card of hers becomes more iconic.
I think all of her stuff's going to hold value. I think it's, one of the most interesting things that's happened in the last few weeks is the drop of both the WNBA and NBA Prism FOTL. WNBA Prism hit its floor and sold out at $2,000 for the first time ever. NBA Prism FOTL hit its floor below $1,000 and went all the way to $700.
Wow.
So you're talking the WNBA box was basically 3 times more valuable than the NBA box. And I heard somebody else make this statement on a podcast earlier in the week, and it's something I really agree with, and I'll repeat it. But you're talking about what's most likely to be the greatest player of all time for a sport coming out. And the analogy they used would be, imagine if 1986 Fleer dropped right now as a product and people were chasing Michael Jordan. And there were other, products that you could chase Michael Jordan in. That's basically what you're chasing, and that's what you're seeing. You're seeing unprecedented valuation of her as a player, as in cards, not just in that. She's going to change the entire landscape for how players get paid. How we already saw the effect in the WNBA of how players are able to travel. And while all that's being said, the WNBA still loses money, but she's propping all of this up because she's that very special, once in a generation talent, and arguably might go down as the greatest player of all time. And if everybody believes that today, and that happens, then every card is going to hold tremendous value long term.
Yep.
But that's why the hype's there today. So,
yeah, well said. Caitlyn Clark, get everything you can. Next question I got here, Matt Ryan. With many special cards going crazy at auction, why does the typical hobbyist only look at previous sales rather than the market trends for that specific set or era? The player's market, the ratio of that player to other in the era, and the pop report of the card. Critical thinking and digging into data may take some time, but it can help identify opportunities. Just a thought I had after selling some rare and scarce cards privately for good profit, only to see them sell much higher at auction months later, makes me want to test the open market on all special cards in the future. Really great paragraph. First thing I want to answer is why people don't look at other things, and they look at previous sales. It's because they're lazy and they're trying to flip it. I'll just say it from someone who is gonna buy and resell. Yeah, well, it's just if I'm gonna buy and resell cards, you want to make sure you're into it and can then just sell it quickly. So that's why they're looking at previous. It's and I know some people can do this, right? It's just it comes down to risk when people are gonna try to buy and sell it. If you're gonna buy a card for the PC, truthfully, if like I've said to you guys offline, I have some conviction about certain cards that I really want to buy. The price and comps, it's a guide. It doesn't mean that's necessarily what you want. But Silver Prism Wemby, cool. I'm not buying that above a previous comp when there's a ton of them, right? Even though he's doing great and trending up, at least his rare stuff. You know what I mean? It continues. It's impressive. It's just if I had a rare or scarce card, I wouldn't really be selling it privately unless I had a good reason to, just because I've done so well on auctions personally with special cards. Piggybacking off of our last one, I've used this as an example. I'll use it again. I had a Caitlyn Clark auto that I was able to get for $500 or $600. This was last year. And I got a PSA 10, and a PSA 10, the only comp was $700. And then I had sent it off to auction. It did $1,500. No one would pay me $1,500 for that card with that previous comp unless you send it off to auction. So Matt, to your point, yeah, if you have something rare, let people fight for it. I was just fighting for a messy rookie the other night. I saw I was getting shilled by the zero feedbacker. That's not even a thing. Someone with zero feedback on eBay, so I just stopped. And then at the very end, someone with over 1,000 feedback just set a new comp above the card because they wanted it. And yeah, I thought I was getting chilled, but obviously someone with like 10 times the amount of feedback as I didn't care and just went out and bought it at an extremely high price. So
yeah. And a lot of times on those cards too, right? You know, for someone like me who likes to buy cards, you know, and do a little forecasting and a little prospecting, right? To buy cards and say, hey, I have a feeling, or I think, or this is the reason I think that this card may go up, you know, and I may just go, I say I'm paying strong because I'll pay you the last comp on the card. But in my mind, I think that card's probably worth more. And maybe 6 months from now, or 4 months from now, or 8 months from now, that card could be worth a lot more. So I don't mind taking a chance on it, because I don't think 6 months or 8 months from now, that card is going to go down. So worst case scenario, it's going to, you know, stay around the same price and I could get out of it. But now I'm taking maybe an opportunity of that card to jump up, right? So you may put that card, what you're saying, you may put that card yourself up on eBay or on auction somewhere, and it may just sell at the last comp. You know, it could sell for $100 less than the last comp, and then 2 weeks or 3 weeks from now, it could sell for double. Like, we have no idea. You know, I understand what he's saying about, you know, the rare and scarce, but it really just comes down to who wants that card. Who's willing to pay for that card? Is it someone like me who's saying I'm going to pay strong? If you put it online, I'll give you, for instance, somebody was selling a card I wanted, right? And they had the card there for $50 or best offer. And I felt the card was probably a $50, $60 card. And I wasn't going to be around to, at the end, to snipe the card, right? So the best offer, I said, hey, I'll give you $75 for it. I made a best offer. Even though it was 50, there was 0 bids on it. I offered him $75 and he turned it down. No, right? All of a sudden I saw that card the next day, because I wasn't going to be able to bid on the card. The next day, that card sold for $52, right? Only 2 people bid on it, the original bidder and then somebody for $52. Now that card is back up on eBay for $125. Buy it now, right? So I go to the guy and say $75 to buy the card. He says, sure, it's yours. And he sells me the card, right? So you have no idea, like, what's going to happen with a card, and who's going to bid on a card. And sometimes you bidding on a card, and like you were just saying, I was being chilled, it was going back and forth. Sometimes you're better off just sitting back and relaxing and let other people fight it out, and then wait to the end and then see, you know, maybe it's still within your price range to buy it. And if not, most of those people that are buying it are turning around and putting it right back on eBay. So if you're not driving up the sale, you still may be able to get. Am I making sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm with you. I think I have probably a little different take on this, because the scarce card, I think, is something I love, and because I'm really confident in my ability to put in the work and do the research and narrate the story to the person that might buy the card from me. And I'll preface that with, I would rather do that and narrate that story than run the risk that you're describing, Ken, on the open market. Sometimes I know, Jordan, you've had a lot of success there, but it could go the other way too. So my way to mitigate risk is try to lean into something that I think I'm strong at in narrating that. The other piece that I'll add to that is, I don't consider anything modern rare and scarce. Don't care if it's numbered. Don't give a crap. A perfect example is this year's NBA Prism, 81 parallels is how many parallels are in it that are numbered. And many of those are numbered. So just because it's numbered, it doesn't make it rare and scarce. Rare and scarce is stuff that was printed many moons ago that there just aren't that many copies of, and more variations in copies aren't going to come out today. And Ken, I think a card that you sold this weekend is a perfect example of that. And you asked my opinion on it when you bought it. And I gave you my opinion from my my understanding of the market for that vintage card. And I told you up front, you will do very well on this card. And I think the comment you got from the person who bought it was, while they paid you extremely strong, they felt they could even make money on it if they needed to.
Yeah.
And when you're going after rare and scarce cards, just, understand what can go around, what else. You don't have to have a comp as long as you know how to arrive and tell the story, and you can still sell that privately, even to people who are going to flip it. I sold a Kobe Bryant National Treasures out of 25 game used dual patch that has 0 comps, and I sold it privately to a store, to a local card shop, for more than I originally thought the card was going to be worth, because as I did more and more research, I got to a higher valuation of the card. And when I walked in, they actually valued the card another $100 above where I was at when they did their research. But it's also a place that I knew I could take the card, who would evaluate the card the way that I was trying to do it. Mm-hmm. So I knew my audience. And I think that's important. If you're going to dive into that rare and scarce world, is to know where you can go with it, and know where you can narrate that story that you might need to, or be willing to go what Jordan's describing from a route perspective and put it in the open market and hope you and try to set the new comp. Many times you'll probably be successful that way. You're probably going to take some L's that way too. I think it's just you have both options are there, and you're always going to take an L, even going the other way too. But I think it really just comes down to what's your preference and where you feel confident in. And for me, I'll probably shy away from the open market and lean into my ability to know where I want to go with the card and how I'm going to narrate the story, from my mitigating my own personal risk. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer either way, but that's just a different perspective.
It's just what people are comfortable to, because as you were saying that, and I'm hearing what you're saying, I'm like, okay, if you too are coming up with this higher valuation, what would it do on the open market if you have all these crazy Kobe collectors looking at it? But I get it's like the comfortability of it. That's a huge part of selling it, and like, if you're happy with what you got, that's all that matters at the end of the day.
Well, I'll give you a perfect example of what you're talking about there. We just were looking at from a multiple perspective and evaluating the Kobe, what the auto version of the card did. Mm-hmm. And oftentimes the auto version of that or another year's variant of that card was about 3x. However, there in January of the following year's version of that card with the auto, it did 3x twice, and it did exactly what the patch did one time. So somebody took a massive L. Literally, it was $3K, $900.
Wow.
On the same card.
Yeah.
Which is wild.
Yeah.
Nothing like that is ever. That's never happened to me. Like on any like significant card, I've always gotten more than I've wanted, but
no, 100%. And that's the way it's probably going to go most of the time. Yeah. But there is, because you just never know, what the right that person may not look at it in that 7-day window.
I'm so skeptical of you saying that I would say someone literally just canceled the sale. I'm sure you're right. Like, I'm just thinking about that, of like that variance, and being like, no.
No, listen, I was too. And then I
would be like, someone like just took the auction down. Like, that's what I would really think. But
when I found it on eBay, 130 point.
130 point's a joke.
I found it on 130 point eBay, found it on a card ladder, found it
130 point is a nightmare. Anyone shows me 130 point, I say bye. I'll check card ladder to make sure it's confirmed. Even that's not perfect, but like, 130 point. Yeah. Vomit. Personally. Last question here. It says it's a two-parter from Michael. And then, do you know how to pronounce Michael's last name?
I do. I have to see it. Let me see.
Virali?
Let's see, Michael.
Sorry, Michael, if I butchered that. I apologize. If it makes you feel better, my last name
Sports cards. Yeah, Variali. Sports cards hobby.
Okay. Thank you. First, when you submit cards to PSA, of the cards you think are PSA 10, what is the percentage that actually are PSA 10? I think that we touched on that a little bit. A lot of it, I think, varies on or touches on like the era that you're sending in. No, maybe.
Yeah, and I think we probably answered both sides earlier.
Oh yeah, we definitely answered the second one. I think it just relying on. I think it's just it kind of speaks that like the second one is how will the new grading standards affect you? I think it just, for me personally, it's not relying on PSA for my whole operation, and relying on selling cards ungraded, just getting them at the right price. That's how it'll affect me, though.
Yeah. Percentage wise, we already talked about that. I mean, every card I send in, I expect to come back at 10, most anyways. Been about 50%. I was a little less on the last one. And you know what? It right now, those nines, the values of those nines are so low. You're selling them for less than what it costs to get them graded, and you need to make up those prices on the ones that do gem, right? So it's almost the game. It's that you're chasing your tail a little bit when you're sending these orders in and coming back, and you're saying, okay, well, 50%, came back nines or worse, and you're just lucky to get the grading fee back on them, where the other ones that gem, you need to pay your grading fee, and you're hoping that's where you're picking up your profit on those.
Yeah. Again, I'm just not worried about the new grading standards.
It's not like it's going to stop me from sending cards.
In general, again, I think it's just, a lot of it is just coincidental timing with bad quality control. I know there's a lot of people talked about, are they looking at a card that previously was a 10 and now when they think if they looked at it again today, it wouldn't be a 10? Sure, but I think that's happened already with PSA. When you look at stuff that's in an older label versus today, there's cards that probably wouldn't grade the same way, and that's why you see, especially in the vintage or maybe the 90s inserts in basketball, where stuff that's in a newer label does a little better than an older label at times. That creates, sub rarity inside of something that's already rare. And it may cause people to, pay up on a particular copy of a card. There's what's the Mike Baker Diamond, right? If that's on there too, right? That creates that sub rarity as well. I just don't think it matters that much, because especially when you get the older cards, it really just comes down to one thing. If it's vintage, it's Ken's been learning the fun way. It's all about eye appeal and centering. Yeah. The grade means so little. That people just want the card that's pretty and that looks good. Does it have good color? Does it have good centering? And that's the card they're going to buy at the price that you offer to them at. Yeah.
So there was one more question that came through on the YouTube section. I'm going to read it quick. And really, I was going to answer this question myself, and then I thought, you know what? It's what I would think, and I just want quick opinion from both of you guys. This came from at Sam Cornwell 1458. It says, I have a 1997 Pinnacle sealed case of WNBA. Would you recommend selling as a case or ripping and selling as singles? So my thought on this is, if you have a sealed case of anything, it's always worth more than the singles that are inside or what could be inside of the, and I would always leave the case sealed and sell it as a case. And I just want you guys just to throw your opinion in quick.
I don't know that set at all, but I know, normally like having the sealed case is definitely just randomly, with no knowledge. I would assume at least the sealed case is going to be the safe thing to
With
do.
anything, would you rip a seal? Say if it wasn't WNBA, say if it was 2018 Prism basketball. We were just talking about this earlier with the missing, Luca card in there, right? So, I mean, would you rip that case
No,
open,
I'd sell the sealed
or
case.
would you sell it as a sealed
I'd
case?
sell the sealed case.
I mean, because you're selling it with the assumption that the hits could be inside, but you could open it up and there could be nothing inside, right?
Yep.
100 billion out of 100 billion times I'm selling the sealed case.
Yeah.
Never a chance. The allure of the big hit brings more value, right? You could bring me. Actually, I helped facilitate a sale of an 86 Fleer box last year, sealed. No way would I have ever ripped that open, knowing that I would have got multiple Michael Jordans out of it. I wouldn't run the risk of one of them not PSA 10ing. Right. I think a perfect example of this was I know there was a recent sale, and actually it was a canceled sale, and it resold at Heritage Auctions, but a 1979 O-Pee-Chee sealed case with the Gretzky rookie in it, right? So I think it sold at first for 3.6 million, and it didn't go through, and it resold for 2.5. But if you just do the math, knowing like in a sealed case there you're going to get like 20 some Gretzky rookies is what it was, is how many 10s you would have had to get to pay for it.
Yeah.
And it's just not going to be there.
Yep.
In no world.
Yeah.
So.
All right, fellas, another great episode. Anything you want to add before we end it?
I think everything I had to say tonight was said, so I'm all good.
I've just given, I know we had a few people can stop and, look at the sign for the podcast while we were at Mohegan. Just give those folks a shout out. Appreciate you stopping and listening and potentially following us and listening in the future. And for all those who brave the weather at Mohegan, I appreciate you coming out as always. It makes the hobby better. Have a good week, and we'll see you next week.
Sounds good. We will be back next week with a brand new episode. Take care, fellas.
See ya.